This is a The Wheel of Time History and Lore video. We are going to review the origin of the Ways as well as what has happened to them since then without getting into any specific plot points related to the current story. Let's start with a high-level look at the Age of Legends. The current story is the Third Age, which began around 3,000 years ago. The Second Age is also known as the Age of Legends. During that time, the world was advanced. There were skyscrapers, for instance. Both women and men channeled the One Power, and they were very powerful. They created the magical devices known as Ungrial, Sa'angreal, and Ter'angreal. The Second Age, or the Age of Legends, is the time of Lewis Theron Telamon, aka the Dragon. At the end of the Second Age was the War of the Shadow, which we will dive deeper into in another video. The short version is that Lewis Theron Telamon came up with a plan to seal the Dark One away in a magical prison. But his female Aes Sedai allies had a different plan. They wanted to keep fighting. So Lewis Theron Telamon went to Shao Ghul with a group known as the 100 Companions, 113 male channelers. There, they sealed the Dark One away in a magical prison. 45 of the men died in the process, but 68 men survived. Great news. However, in the process of sealing the Dark One away, the Dark One corrupted the male half of the One Power. So the 68 survivors and eventually all male channelers began to go mad. That began the breaking of the world. Due to his madness, Lewis Theron Telamon unfortunately killed his family. That is why some refer to him as Kinslayer. However, one of the Forsaken healed the dragon of the madness so that Lewis could see what he had done. Once he realized that he had killed his family, he took in way too much of the One Power, more than he could handle, and he died. The dragon's death created an enormous mountain known as Dragonmount. His death also impacted the nearby river. The river split and created an island. That island is now Tar Valon. That is where female Aes Sedai raised the White Tower. They raised it in sight of Dragonmount. So the Aes Sedai at the White Tower can see Dragonmount, and it is a reminder of the danger of men channeling saidin, the male half of the One Power. Now let's talk about the time of madness. The dragon's death wasn't the breaking of the world. It was just the beginning of the breaking of the world. The breaking actually lasted around 300 years, or 100 years in the show adaptation. So the breaking of the world is also referred to as the time of madness. Ogier live in forests known as steadings. Steadings are magical in their own ways. One way is that you cannot channel the One Power in a steading. So men went there to escape the madness, and it worked. While the men stayed in the steadings, they were protected from the taint of the Dark One. But it was not just that they could not wield the One Power or touch the source, they could no longer even sense that the source existed. In the end, none could accept that isolation. So one by one, the men left the steadings, hoping that the taint was gone. Unfortunately, it was not. Over the next 300 years, every man who channeled eventually went mad and caused devastating destruction. That is why the breaking the world is also called the Time of Madness. During this time, the world was set back thousands of years. In the current time period, the Red Ajah tend to believe that the Ogier Sanctuary prolonged the breaking and made it worse. On the other hand, the Blue Ajah tend to believe that the sanctuary helped to spread out the destruction over time. The Blue Ajah believe that this helped the female Aes Sedai save what could be saved. Of course, it's all hypothetical. No one knows what would have happened if all the male Aes Sedai had gone mad at the same time, as opposed to over a 300-year-long period. Okay, now we will finally discuss the point of this video, the Ways. The male Aes Sedai were thankful for the sanctuary in the steadings, so when they left, they gave the Ogier a gift. The male Aes Sedai created gateways outside of the steadings. Those gateways allowed the Ogier to travel between steadings in an alternate dimension, for lack of better words. A dimension where time and space work differently. A dimension where you could travel far and fast. It was a nice gift, and the gift was called the Ways. Inside the Ways are a number of ramps, bridges, and islands, and the maps within are written in Ogier script. That is why Moiraine asked Loial to help guide them. But there is a problem with the Ways. The Ways are a living thing in some fashion, so the Ways can change over time. And keep in mind, the Ways were created by male Aes Sedai using saidin, the male half of the One Power. So the Ways were created by power that was tainted by the Dark One. Long story short, according to Loial, son of Arryn, son of Hallan, the Ways began to change about 1,000 years prior to the current story. The Ways grew dim and dark. Bridges within the Ways began to collapse. Over time, more and more people went missing in the ways, and those who came out spoke of being watched from the dark. Some of those who came out of the ways were mad. They raved about a black wind called Machin Shin. As a result, the elders among the Ogier now prohibit anyone from traveling in the ways. So that's the ways. They were created as a gift to the Ogier by male Aes Sedai around 3,000 years ago. But they were created with saidin, which is tainted by the Dark One. Around 1,000 years ago, the ways began to change. Now, the ways are falling apart and the space is haunted by an evil black wind called Machin Shin. Nevertheless, the last battle is coming, and Moiraine has to get to the Eye of the World fast. So Loial has agreed to break the prohibition by leading his new friends into, through, and hopefully out of the ways.